My heart is just broken for people whose lives have been impacted, especially so many of the people that we talk to, these athletes who've had their seasons ended very, very abruptly without actually getting to do what it is that they've been training for so long to do. So my first feeling is just like, I just can't believe how difficult this must be.
Welcome to Champions Mojo Weekly Podcast, where your hosts Kelly Pallas and Maria Parker share with you what it takes to be a champion. Kelly is a former Division I head swim coach, Olympic trials qualifier, and holds Masters World and National swimming records. And Maria holds world records in endurance cycling and was the overall women's winner of the world's toughest bike race across America. They'll be sharing their personal stories and wisdom, along with interviewing other champions to give you the tools you need for becoming a true champion in your own life. And now, your host, Kelly Pallas.
Hello, friends. Welcome to the Champions Mojo podcast. And today we have a special episode, which we are entitling Crisis Counseling. And as everyone knows, we are in uncharted territory with the pandemic of the coronavirus. And I'm so glad that I have Maria, my co-host, with me to talk about this. Maria has a master's degree in counseling. Maria, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think the wind is out of my sails for how quickly everything has changed in the last week, and especially the last 2 days. And of course, my heart is just broken for people whose lives have been impacted, especially so many of the people that we talk to, these athletes who've had their seasons ended very, very abruptly without actually getting to do what it is that they've been training for so long to do. So my first feeling is just like, I just can't believe how difficult this must be.
We have many listeners that are swimmers and young swimmers and college swimmers and pro swimmers and master swimmers. And then we have the non-swimmers, and they're just, everything is being canceled. And there's just no, like you said it perfectly, it's just a sock in the gut. I was going to be heading to the women's NCAA swimming championships as part of the media to watch that meet, which I have every year for as long as I can remember. And it's so incredible to see this piece of history be taken out and have swimmers that have not even shaved their legs for 9 months not be able to do that and saved their best performances for last. And it's just, I think, like we said before we started this, that you feel like in your training and just in general crisis counseling is just listening. And I think our main message that we want to put out there to our listeners today is that we feel your pain, and we absolutely think you have every right to be disappointed and angry and sad. And sure, all of that balanced against someone's life looks like it maybe you're not allowed to speak your anger or speak your sadness or speak your disappointment, because at the end of the day, hey, this is being done to save lives, but that doesn't negate the fact that those emotions are real and that you have every right to feel them, and that it just is a really hard situation.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, Kelly. And I think sometimes, as you said, we can feel guilty because we feel like we're considering our own lives, and we know that we should be feeling more patriotic, or somehow feeling that we should be caring for those unnamed people who are sick or who may get sick in the future. But, it's okay to complain. That's what the first thing I would say is, if you have had your life altered, which we all have to some degree, but if you have had your life altered in some really large disappointment, talk about it. You can talk about it over and over and over again. You don't have to stop complaining about it. You can complain, and you should. And that is the way we process these difficult things. We keep talking about it. We find people we love who will listen. We talk to other people who have had disappointments. And, I one of the things that I didn't understand that I have now come to understand is like, I was like, why are they making such a big deal about this? There aren't that many sick people. But my husband and my son, who love spreadsheets, have been showing me basically if we don't do what we're doing now, there will be so many sick people just overwhelming the system at once that many, many people will die unnecessarily. And because we're making this sacrifice, I guess, many, 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 many lives will be saved in the future. I didn't really understand that. And I thought, oh my gosh, this seems like an overkill. But I understand much better now that, the hospitals cannot get overwhelmed. But then people, not just people with COVID-19, but people who have a heart attack or people who have cancer or, anybody who needs care will not be able to get care. So, if you didn't understand that may help you understand it, but it doesn't make it any better.
No,
it doesn't. It just really stinks. It stinks, and it's okay, as you said, to feel bad.
Yeah, to feel lost.
Feel sad.
I think it's important to think of it that way. That yes, it's the virus's fault, and we can be mad at the NCAA or USA Swimming or state government that's canceling any kind of thing that's going on out there where people are going to be gathered. But it's really, let's blame the virus, and then time will pass. Life will go on. Things will go back to normal. But right now it's just a really tough time. And, I know it's a kind of a trite little statement, but that which doesn't kill us really makes us stronger. And one of the themes that we have unearthed from so many of the champions that we've talked to and the top Olympic coaches is that truly it's the tough times that define success in the future. And though right now this is, it's maybe too early to talk about, the championship that you can win next year or the best time that you can do next year, but that is going to come. And so maybe by just looking at that little pinprick of light at the end of the tunnel.
I love that. I love that idea. That's absolutely right. First you cry.
Yes.
That's, first you cry, first you grieve, and you cannot skip that. But then there is a pinprick of light out there, and it's going to be exciting for me to see what these amazing, resilient people, athletes and others, what they do with this terrible difficulty.
Yes. Now, I know this is, again, maybe going to be too Pollyannic, but I was thinking if I were to be in this situation, and it's very easy, Maria, for you and I to put ourselves in this situation because we've been high level athletes who have looked forward to, and I can say my senior year of my NCAA eligibility, I got mono. And even though I went to NCAAs, I was still just exhausted. I hadn't trained for 4 weeks. I swam the mile because I'd qualified in the mid-season invitational. And I swam, just a horrible mile, but I still went, but it was like kind of losing my senior year. So it's easy for us to put ourselves in this place. And I also am so close to a lot of the NCAA athletes, and you and I have talked about our funny little NC State background, my, being an NC State alum swimmer and you being a University of Virginia, alum, and how I think those two women's swim teams this year were headed for historic performances. I believe that the University of Virginia women would have won the NCAAs, the entire title. And it just crushes me that, I'm a Virginian. I'm born, I grew up in Virginia. You and my brother, Jim, went to Virginia. You met there. I really would love to see Virginia win that title. And I think the NC State women would have been in the Final Four. That would have been 2 ACC teams that, we're in the ACC. And so to miss that it's just gut-wrenching for a number of reasons. Just me, little peon lady doing a podcast, and not even the athletes that didn't shave, that didn't rest. Most of those Virginia women and NC State women did not rest or shave for their ACC. So what I thought I would do, because I do have my head a little bit deeper in this game than the average swim fan, I thought because the mental training that we covered, the mindset, which is part of what we talk about here on Champions Mojo, is this is an opportunity for one to mentally finish their season in their mind's eye. I would personally put myself at NCAA's, beautifully shaved, beautifully tapered, feeling like $1 million in the water, making every part of my race from the start to the turns to the finish immaculate, and look up and see the time and the victory and the great time that I envisioned. Now I would still finish my season, this season, that all of the people have worked so hard for, whether that's an age, because tons of the age group, all the swim meets are wiped out. So whether you're an age grouper listening to this, or a college swimmer, or a pro swimmer, or a master swimmer, I would finish the season in my mind's eye and have the last word in my mind of what really happened. And, you know, they say that a perfectly imagined event, your mind doesn't know the difference between that and reality. And so I would just give this season your own end. Write it in your journal, see it in your mind, and then that will go into your memory banks. And I really think that it will help you in the long run.
Oh, I think that is so beautiful, Kelly. I think that's a great exercise for anybody out there whose season was cut short. That's beautiful. And I would just add that this is a collective. This is, everybody has to go through difficult times, and anybody who's listening to this has gone through a difficult time at some time or another. And this is just another difficult time. The only difference is we're all sharing it. We're all, everyone who's had to cancel something important is sharing it. So there's almost this huge energy of sadness, which we can kind of, comfort each other in that. And then we can remember, hey, we've been through tough times before, and we're going to this is going to be part of what Lewis Pugh calls our stack. When we do move forward, when this is all over, and it will be over, we're going to have this incredible thing that we got through. So I love that, Kelly. I love the mental imagery of that. And I hope that everybody's able to finish their season or do their thing in their mind and write it down. And then remember, I got through this. I've gotten through other things. I'm going to get through this too.
Yes. In general, I think mental health-wise, we always talk about mental health, and I want to address everyone, not just whether you're a swimmer or not, on the fear factor, the anxiety factor, the mental health factor. Yeah. Sure. Now we've talked about the kind of sports performance part of this, or the performance, and that's, your performance of the year was kind of taken from you, and now if you're just talking about what's happening in the world, it's scary. I've admitted, we talked with our beautiful friend Ethan Zohn, and how he's struggled with anxiety. And it's very scary to wake up every day and just have the news be filled with, the death count, the death toll, even though it's not as bad as some seasonal flus have been yet. It's still an unknown. People hoarding toilet paper and bottled water, and it's a very fearful environment out there. And I think mental health wise, that we had some tips that we wanted to go over. And Maria, you want to name a few, and I'll name a few of the ones that we wanted to share that people can do to kind of help with this fear factor.
Sure. I think one of the important things to do is to unplug from the news occasionally. It's not bad to listen in a little bit so that you know what you're supposed to be doing, but do not spend the whole day looking at this terrible news, these newscasts, any kind of social media. We have a negative bias. We're drawn towards the negativity. It's very evolutionary in our genes, and we have to fight that, because that's what sells, and that's what they're going to put in front of our eyes. So my first tip would be unplug some.
Yes.
And then the second tip would be to reach out by phone, at least, with people who love you, and talk to the people that you love and that love you. Share your anxieties, share your fears, and it'll seem so much better shared than it does alone in your mind. Kelly, I've got a couple more.
Yes. One of the ones that I think is important is to try to keep exercise or moving. That, being
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, being out in nature, just taking walks, getting out. I know all our swimming listeners they're not even allowed to swim right now. So it's got to be a huge change. So, don't just sit in front of your screen depressed in your room. Get out and walk and try something different. And that was kind of the second thing. So continue exercising, because that's just really good for anxiety. And exercising in nature is even better. And the second part of the exercising and getting outside is being in tune with mindfulness. So being aware of what you're thinking of. So if you're focused on just the virus and just what you lost, then that's going to just keep you in, a dark place. And if you can kind of be aware of what you're thinking, that's huge for getting over anxiety. So if you, stop the negative thoughts and then just switch it to even a neutral thought. We've talked about that. Just changing it to something neutral is better than, if you can't be real positive right now, then just don't be mired down in the negative.
Yeah. And then, of course, if you meditate or pray, this is a great time to do it. I've found so much solace in prayer, just, knowing that there's a greater power and that things are not out of control. Consider if you don't meditate or pray, picking up that practice. It'll be very helpful to reduce your anxiety.
Yes, I love that one. And then the final one that I'd like to put in there would be that we are kind of a social distance right now. And so they do have some great online counseling. If you feel really badly, so much so that you feel like you need to talk to a professional counselor, well, there's BetterHelp. I think there's a Talkspace. There are just a lot of them that are online that, you can talk to someone over the internet, and that could be, a good way to make yourself feel better.
Yeah, I think that's a great tip. And even if you don't feel terrible, it's never bad to get counseling. And I'm sure there's plenty of people out there willing and ready to. I guess you would just Google online counseling, Kelly.
Yeah, online counseling. If you Google that, like top 10 sites come up. So, Maria, anything before we go to our third bullet, and then we're going to wrap this up in being under 20 minutes?
No, that's all for me.
The third pillar of what we wanted to talk about today was just our podcast, and we want to keep our podcast rolling. We're still going to talk to swimmers. It'll be interesting to see what some of their takes are on what's happening, but we wanted to just remind you that on Champions Mojo podcast, we may not be talking about the X's and O's of swimming, but we're still going to be talking about what champions do. And right now is a time when your inner champion is really going to shine when you come up against adversity. So we hope that you'll keep listening. I know next week we do have an interview with Gary Taylor, and it was pre-NCAA cancellation, but Gary has some amazing things that he talks about for becoming a champion that I think are just super applicable at any time. So I hope you'll keep listening, whether or not the swim season resumes within 30 days or 60 days or 90 days, but we're here to make your lives better and help raise you up and motivate you and inspire you and hopefully bring you some education of talking to these great champions.
Yeah, I think listening to the podcast would be a great thing to do in these difficult times, because as you said, Kelly, we are learning so much from our guest about what it's like to be encouraged, to be motivated,
yes,
to be a champion.
Absolutely. Well, Maria, that's our first special edition, and we'll look forward to giving an update when things go back to normal. And in the meantime, we'll be doing some great interviews.
Yeah. Stay safe, Kelly. Love you.
Love you too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
This week's quote of the week comes from Henry Ward Beecher. One's best success often comes after their greatest disappointments. You've been listening to the Champions Mojo podcast, designed to make you feel inspired, motivated, and educated. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and Google Play. Also visit championsmojo.com to learn more.